Dora went blind the day her stepmother dipped her 2 fingers into her eyes, and her melodious voice made a river god fall in love with her. Dora's mother died when she was 12, leaving her with her father, and a year later, she also lost her father. Her father had married her mother and his second wife just a few months apart, and Dora had a stepsister who was 2 months older than her. Dora was maltreated by her stepmother and her children, and she was the only one doing things around the house, without anyone's help. One of the things she loved doing most was going to the river to fetch water. There at the river, she composed songs about her situation at that moment, and sang them with joy, but most times with pain. She got so used to the river that she sometimes sneaked out just to go there and sing, because each time her stepmother caught her singing around the house, it was always double punishment. After singing, she would sneak back to the house to complete her chores. Dora was beaten to a stupor one day for not cleaning her stepmother's room because she was busy with other chores. She needed to put how she was feeling into a song, so she sneaked out of the house when she was cooking, thinking that she would be back early. However, she got delayed by a handsome hunter whom she met by the river. He enjoyed her songs so much that he made a fire and roasted his catch for them to eat right there. When Dora remembered she had something on fire, it was already so late, but she sprinted back to the house. When she got to the kitchen, the food in the pot was missing, but the burnt part was still there in the pot. With both hands on her head, Dora started to cry. Her stepmother noticed she was around and came out of the house holding a cane. She dipped 2 fingers into Dora's eyes and then flogged her without mercy. After she was done flogging her, Dora could no longer see anything. Dora became blind and was no longer allowed to do anything. She wasn't even given food. All she did was sit beside the house, soaked in her tears during the day, and at night, she would find her way back into the house to sleep. The neighbor's little son used to come each day to give Dora food without her stepmother's notice. One day, Dora had to beg him to take her to the river, and when he did, she asked him to return home and come back later to take her home. Dora could feel the serenity, so she managed to sit by the river and started pouring out her heart in a song. All of a sudden, she heard something so mighty come out of the river, and she paused immediately. She was so frightened that she began to shiver. "Who is it?" Dora asked in a trembling tone. And then, something pierced through her eyeballs, and all of a sudden, she could see. She saw this shiny image standing in the river, still dancing. Dora struggled to get up on seeing the shiny image that was still in the water, dancing seriously. It was the image of a fair-complexioned, middle-aged man with very long hair. He had a beautiful gold-colored robe on. His robe was so shiny as he danced slowly to her song, as well as his skin. She staggered backward and then finally regained her balance. She stood there, paused, with her mouth agape, still trying to comprehend what was going on, but everything seemed like a dream. Dora had stopped singing, but this image wouldn't stop dancing. She tiptoed backward quietly before racing out of there, but her bubble burst when she stepped on a small piece of wood that broke, making a very loud sound. The image paused as soon as he heard the sound, and all of a sudden he turned, now staring at her. He stretched forth his arm towards her, and immediately she could no longer see. "Help!" Dora started to scream, turning left and then right, but she paused as soon as she remembered that she was standing by a river, and she took a few more steps backward in order not to drown. "Help!" she continued screaming, but no one was around or heard her. Dora became so scared and was visibly shaking. She had a stick in her hand, which she used to identify clear pathways at home. She still held onto it. It was like her second eye. She stretched it forth, swinging it from side to side to be sure there were no obstacles of any kind before her. And she began to walk slowly out of there. "Help!" She screamed again, but heard no response. She continued walking slowly again, like a baby who was learning how to walk, still swinging her stick from side to side. Dora walked for almost half an hour, still screaming for help, but she saw no one. When she noticed she was walking deep into the bush, she decided to sit somewhere with her stick stretched forth, and she began to cry. She paused when she started to hear someone's footsteps from afar off, and she started to swing her stick from side to side again. "Who is there?" Dora asked in a trembling tone, but the person did not respond, which made her more frightened. "I say, who is there?" she asked again, now struggling to get up, thinking it was the image she saw in the water. "Calm down, dear friend. When I heard the beautiful song from afar, I knew it was no other person than you," the voice said. "Please, who are you?" Dora queried. "Your friend, the hunter," he said, and she became relieved. They exchanged pleasantries, and he came forth, grabbed her shoulders, and then made her sit back on the ground. "I have been coming around since the last time we met at the river, but I haven't been seeing you. What happened to you? Did you lose your sight or something?" He probed, and Dora nodded. "Please, what happened?" he asked, and then she sighed. "It's a long story," Dora said, with tears dripping down. "Please, can you share it?" Dora sighed again, and then she narrated everything to him. He felt deeply sorry and assured her that she was going to see again someday. She smiled and thanked him for at least giving her a little hope. The hunter made a fire and again roasted his catch for them to eat. They talked about many things, and he told her some jokes which made her laugh so hard, forgetting her sorrows for a while. After a few hours, Dora told him she needed to return home, even though her stepmother and her children didn't even care about her existence. He asked her the name of her village for the first time, and she told him. He said he was from the neighbouring village, but his grandmother was from Dora's village. All these they hadn't discussed the last time they met, because all he cared about was her song and her voice, and all she cared about was the catch he had in the fire, as the last time she ate meat was when her father was alive. They arrived at Dora's village, and they stopped a few houses from hers, following her instructions. The hunter bade her farewell, not knowing that Dora's stepsister had been watching them. Dora managed to walk home slowly, and as soon as she stepped in, she was welcomed with strokes of cane. She cried out so loud following each stroke of the cane. She couldn't see, so she didn't even know where to run to. The fear of falling if she tried to run made her succumb to their torture, as her stepmother's children were with her cheering her on. Dora fell on her knees begging God to do something, while the strokes landing on her body brought nothing but deep pain as she knelt there, rubbing her body and saying silent prayers. "Leave her alone," Dora heard all of a sudden. It was the voice of Mama Nana, their neighbour. But Dora's stepmother ignored her and continued flogging her. Mama Nana had to push her aside. "You pushed me away!" Dora's stepmother kept on screaming, but Mama Nana ignored her and started pulling Dora up. "Mama Nana, don't try that thing you're about to do or I'll flog both of you," Dora heard her stepmother say. "Try it and see if you and your children won't spend the night in the police cell," Mama Nana threatened, which made Dora's stepmother keep quiet. Mama Nana took Dora to her house, bathed her, and then gave her food. Dora hadn't bathed for some time since the incident occurred, which made her lose her sight. Who would even keep water for her to bathe with? Her stepmother or her children? After they chatted for a while, Mama Nana combed Dora's unkempt hair. After a few hours, she took Dora home, threatening her stepmother and her children that she would get them arrested if they laid their hands on Dora again. Dora felt a bit relieved. The following day, Dora was at her usual spot where she used to sit beside the house, thinking about what was gradually becoming of her when she felt someone's presence. Goosebumps filled her entire body, and she immediately picked up her stick and swung it from side to side. "Who is that?" Dora asked. "Don't be afraid, is this where you live?" the voice asked slowly. It was a man's voice, and it wasn't a familiar one at all, yet it already sounded like that of one who knew her. "Who are you?" Dora probed again, curious for an answer. "I am," he said, and then paused. Dora was wondering what made him pause, and was about to ask him if he was still there when she started to hear footsteps marching forth. "Dora, it's obvious that your blindness is beginning to affect your brain. Why did you mess up the toilet like that?" her stepsister raged. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I had a running stomach and I couldn't locate the pit, so I had to do it on the floor when it was about to drop on me. But I cleaned it up," Dora said with a grin. They were using a pit toilet and it was quite difficult for her to locate the pit. "With my mother's favorite piece of rag?" her stepsister questioned in a very harsh tone. Please, I'm sorry. I'll wash it once I'm done with this stranger here," Dora said, pointing towards the direction where the man's voice had come from. "Which stranger?" her stepsister quizzed. "The man standing there. Or has he gone?" Dora asked, turning towards the direction where her sister's voice came from. "You're definitely not okay," her stepsister hissed, and then walked away. "How come? When did he go?" Dora muttered to herself. "I'm here," the stranger said. "But..." Dora began, but she again started hearing her sister's voice coming towards her. "Very foolish human being. Who do you think will clean up your mess and then wash up the piece of rag you used?" her stepsister said, still coming forth. She approached and then rubbed Dora's face with the piece of rag Dora had used to clean up her mess. Dora didn't know it was her stepmother's rag when she used it. She thought it was one of her clothes she had left on the line because she had picked it from there, and after she was done, she had thrown it in the bush. "I hope you like the smell of your own mess?" her stepsister questioned, hissed, and then walked away again. Dora's face was oozing so badly that she started throwing up, and then she began to cry. "Who is she?" the stranger quizzed. "You're still here? Please, who are you?" Dora managed to ask while still sobbing. "My name is Neon." "Who is she?" he questioned again. "Neon? From where?" Dora asked. "Well, she's my stepsister," she added, cleaning her face with the cloth she had on. Neon sighed. "You haven't answered me. From where?" Dora managed to ask again amid tears. And then her step-siblings approached, laughing so hard. Dora was already so scared, thinking they were coming to her. "Please leave her alone. Let's go to the river before Mama comes back," one of them said. "Thank God," Dora whispered to herself. After they left, Dora asked the stranger again where he came from, but there was no response. It was when she asked repeatedly without an answer that she knew he had left. Well, her step-siblings arrived about an hour later, telling their mother, who had already returned from where she went, about the mysterious thing that they had witnessed. The river the villagers fetched water from, even before they were born, had suddenly dried up before their eyes. The river dried up before their very eyes. How? Dora sat there questioning herself. Immediately, her stepmother ran past her while her children followed. What's going on? How can the river just dry up like that? Dora asked, but none of them cared to answer. They returned about an hour later, seriously lamenting. Their mother asked them if it was an atrocity they had committed by the river that caused it to dry up. But they said they had done nothing. So how come other people can see the river, even fetching from it, but we can't? Is there something you children are not telling me? I am finished. Dora's stepmother continued lamenting until she burst into tears. Dora became so scared and confused. Is it that the gods are angry with us or what? She asked rhetorically. Can someone talk to me, please? What's going on? She probed, but they all ignored her. Villagers started gathering in numbers in their compound to confirm the rumor that was already flying around the village, and Dora's stepmother and siblings wouldn't stop explaining to everyone what had happened and what was happening. Later, the king of their village summoned Dora's stepmother and her children, and they went to the palace, leaving Dora all alone in the house. After they returned, they still kept mute, without saying a word to Dora. It was the following day, when their neighbor's son came to visit Dora, that he told her that the chief priest had asked her stepmother and her children never to go close to the river again, and that her stepmother should amend her ways. The priest said that she and her children had offended the water god, and the only way not to incur his wrath further was to stay far away from the river. Dora's stepmother and her children started going to the neighboring village to fetch water. They were the only ones in the village who dared not go close to the village river. As a result of what happened, things became extremely difficult for Dora. Before then, they used to fetch a full small cup of water for her to drink throughout the day. But when they started going to the neighboring village for water, no one cared about her any longer, and she started going to their neighbors, begging them for water. One day, Dora was very thirsty, and on that particular day, none of their neighbors were around. She continued roaming about in their neighborhood in tears, swinging her stick from side to side, screaming at the top of her voice for water. But some who her stepmother had brainwashed heard her but refused to give. She roamed about until she missed her way, until a good Samaritan brought her back home. How long have you been blind? He asked, sitting her on her mat. A few months ago, Dora said, wiping her tears with the hem of the cloth she was wearing. What if I take you somewhere so you can see again? He quizzed, stroking her hair, but she immediately withdrew her head. But I don't even know who you are, Dora said, sitting up. It's me, Neon. Neon? Wait, you were the one who came here the other day, right? Dora asked, pointing in his direction. Wait, were you, or are you invisible? How come my sister did not see you? You're right, and no, I'm not invisible. She's only blind within, he said. How do you mean? Where exactly are you from, and how and when did you leave here the other day? Dora questioned. You will find out soon. Come, let's go. Let me take you to where your sight will be regained, he said. And on hearing that, Dora jumped up. Wow, really? Really? Dora asked. But he helped her up and they journeyed with him, holding one of her hands. But where are we going, and can I trust you? We are almost there, and yes, you can trust me, he said confidently. Dora wasn't scared following him to wherever he was taking her so she could see again. All she wanted was to regain her sight. They finally arrived at a place so cool, calm and serene. Wait, is this the river? Dora asked. You're right, Neon said. Dora was about to ask him what they were doing there when she felt splashes of water on her face, and all of a sudden, something pierced through her eyes and she could see again. "It's a lie, I can see! I can see!" Dora said at the top of her voice, and then she remembered who brought her there. She turned towards his direction to thank him for what he had done, but she didn't see anyone. Dora turned left and then right, front and then back, but she found no one. "Hello? Hello? Neon?" She called several times, but there was no sign of him. She even walked around the river, but there was still no sign of him. She paused for a while, so surprised. How could he suddenly disappear into thin air just like that? The puzzle remained unsolved for her as she finally left for home. When Dora reached home, her stepmother and her children were sitting in front of the house, eating, and one of her children burst into laughter as soon as she saw Dora. "Someone threw away your stick, I guess?" her stepsister quizzed, laughing out so hard. "Come, better find your way to your usual spot or go inside the house. Just leave. Your presence irritates me," her stepmother said, and then took a scoop of whatever they were eating. Dora proceeded into the house, and on seeing how she walked past them majestically, her stepmother dropped the spoon she had in her hand subconsciously, while her children's jaws dropped in awe. Come back," her stepmother said, and Dora took a few steps backward, now standing before them. "Ma?" Dora asked, looking at her. "Can you see me?" her stepmother asked, waving her hand. "I can." "What am I doing?" she probed. "Waving your hand." "Chai, someone has taken this girl to a dibia, native doctor," her stepbrother said, standing up. "How come?" Her stepsister, who was almost the same age as Dora, asked. "A stranger visited a while ago and took me to the river. That was where I regained my sight," Dora explained. "Which river? You mean our village river?" asked her stepmother, and Dora nodded. "You mean you saw the river with water with your very eyes?" she asked again, and Dora again nodded. "But who took you there?" "I don't know him, and his voice wasn't familiar." "Hey, go inside," her stepmother said, looking away. After a few minutes, she called Dora out again. "Go to the river and bring some water," she ordered. "Ma? What is Ma?" "My friend, go and pick a container and bring water from the river." "You think this sight that you regained isn't for a purpose?" "Since my children and I can't see the river, then you will be the one to fetch it." Her children sat there jamming hands with each other and laughing. Dora turned and walked slowly into the house, picked a container, and then left for the river. She felt so bad that she cried on her way there. She sat close to it and began to sing while shedding tears, telling the river what happened in a song. All of a sudden, she heard this sound from the river, as though something came out of it. She paused and stared at it, but saw nothing, though some fishermen used to kill fishes from there sometimes. It could be a big fish, Dora thought to herself, and then continued singing. After about an hour, she bent down to carry her container of water when she sighted the fisherman from afar walking towards her. "It's you," she said, standing up. "Hello, dear friend," he said with a smile. "Good day." "You can see me?" he quizzed. "Yes, I can. I still don't know your name," Dora replied. "My name?" he asked, and she nodded. "My name is Odu." "Yes, Odu," he said with a grin. "You're not sure of your own name?" Dora asked with a smile, but he laughed. "Wow, glad to see that you've regained your sight. How did the miracle happen?" Dora explained about the stranger who had brought her to the river and how she had regained her sight, mentioning that when she opened her eyes, he was nowhere to be found. "Wow, it could be the river god," you know, Odu said with a grin. River god! Don't get me scared, please. Does this river have a god? Dora asked nervously. Just joking. Let me help you, he said, carrying her container of water. As they walked, Odu asked, You regained your sight just yesterday, and they are already stressing you. I really don't have a choice, you know. I must do whatever they want, Dora said with a bowed head. They talked and chatted until they finally arrived a few houses from Dora's home. She collected the container from him and carried it on her head. Odu turned to leave, and they bade each other farewell. He had this charming smile that Dora always wanted to see. Arriving home, Dora dropped the water in the kitchen where her stepmother was already arranging what to cook. Her stepmother started to yell that Dora had stayed out too long, but Dora ignored her. It's my favorite. Let me prepare it just the way I want, her stepmother said, when Dora asked to allow her to prepare the food. Dora went to sit outside when her stepmother refused. To cut the story short, Dora's stepmother was preparing yam porridge, but the yam remained as hard as rock even after 3 hours of cooking it. Even the ingredients she poured into the pot were floating on the water in the pot as the water refused to boil. Her stepmother would come and check the pot countless times, and then make Dora blow the fire repeatedly before going back inside the house. Dora sat outside wondering if it wasn't ordinary porridge yam her stepmother was cooking. How come? Dora would ask herself, as she was so famished. At least, no matter how small her portion would be, it was manageable. Her stepmother returned outside moments later and went into the kitchen to check what she was cooking. This time, she flung the pot cover outside. Dora had even dozed off. It was the sound of the pot cover that jerked her awake. What is this? Ordinary porridge? Her stepmother asked herself, and then came outside from the kitchen angrily. What did you put inside this food that the water has even refused to boil for almost 4 hours now? She demanded. On hearing that, Dora stood up immediately and began to wonder how that could be possible. Nothing, Ma. I didn't put anything, Dora said, waving both hands, but her stepmother gave her a thunderous slap. I've been cooking my food without any issues when you were blind. Now that you've regained your sight, things have begun to get worse. What kind of a child are you? Her stepmother yelled at her, but Dora couldn't do anything. She just stood there crying. Her stepmother returned to the kitchen, brought out the pot, and then emptied the contents on Dora's body. Dora's heart skipped a beat as her jaw dropped in shock, thinking it was boiling water being poured on her, but the water was as cold as ice. All the while when the food was on the fire, Dora didn't have the courage to open the lid to even see the stage it was at, not knowing that the water hadn't even boiled. Her stepmother then slammed the pot on the ground and started to yell at Dora again, accusing her of witchcraft and saying that everything was her fault. What did you do to my food, you daughter of a witch? Her stepmother quizzed again, but Dora shook her head as she stood there drowned in her own tears. Her stepmother let out a long hiss and walked away. Dora cried, and even blamed her late mother for bringing her into this world, only to grow up in the midst of people who didn't like her. A few hours later, it was already late. Dora's stepmother and her children had already gone out to get food for themselves, while Dora sat outside the house lonely, alone, and famished. After singing different songs for hours, Dora decided to go to the river that night, as that was the only place that gave her peace of mind. Dora sat by the river under the very bright moon and sang melodious songs, while also throwing tiny stones into the water. Suddenly, she started to hear footsteps. She turned left and then right, but saw no one, and she became frightened. "Who's there?" she asked, but she could still hear the footsteps. "Who's there?" she asked again, but heard no response. Dora got up to leave immediately and heard laughter coming from behind her. "Don't be scared, it's me," said Odu the hunter. And as soon as Dora saw him, she became a bit relieved. "You scared me," she said with a hand on her chest. "Sorry," he said with a grin. "But what are you doing here at this time of the night?" Dora exhaled and then folded her arms. "My stepmother and step-siblings story," she said, looking away. "What happened this time?" he probed, and Dora explained everything to him. "What are you doing here?" she asked him too. "I'm a hunter, remember? I hunt any time," he replied. He laughed so hard about the porridge that refused to boil, and Dora had to ask him to stop laughing. "Care for some roasted bushmeat?" he asked, and Dora nodded. It was a very big catch this time. "She deserves it, you know," he added. They sat by the river, chatting for a very long time. Dora even sang to him, and finally the meat was ready. She ate to her fill, and after a few minutes she told him she wanted to go. Odu saw her off to the house, but it was late, so the doors had already been locked. Dora was so scared to knock at first, as soon as Odu left, but she summoned the courage to do so. Her stepsister opened the door and started to insult her, calling her a prostitute as soon as she set eyes on her. Dora slapped her, and it resulted in a fight. Before she knew what was happening, her stepmother and her children gathered around her, and she was thoroughly beaten up. "Since you like going to the river, now go and pick up a container from the kitchen and go fetch some water," her stepmother said, and Dora went on her knees. "Please, Ma, it's late. I'll fetch it tomorrow," Dora begged, but her stepmother refused, telling her to fill up the 3 big drums in the kitchen. Well, Dora left for the kitchen to pick up a container, and she left for the river. Everywhere was so quiet because of the time, but all thanks to the moon for its brightness. She sang on her way to the river in tears, walking on the narrow path alone. For more interesting episodes, type continue in the comment section. We love you.